I'm Matt Peters from Lighthanded Enterprises, and thank you all so much for being here today. You all know this scene. Kids getting their checkups at the pediatrician's office. The purpose of the checkup exam is to screen for silent problems that would have long-term consequences if not detected and treated. The problem that we're seeking to address is that pediatricians are only 53% accurate at screening for a literally silent problem, childhood hearing loss resulting from fluid in the middle ear. This condition, called otitis media with effusion, is very challenging to detect with the standard tool used by a doctor for wellness exams, the white light otoscope. If kids aren't properly diagnosed when they have OME, they're not treated. And if they're not treated, they're at much higher risk for having developmental and learning delays, especially young children who are at a developmentally critical stage. This underdiagnosis is a large and costly enough problem that leading medical institutions have called for improved diagnosis methods repeatedly over the years. We talked with more than 50 pediatricians to find out what they really need to accurately diagnose the 200,000 kids who get chronic OME every year in the United States. They told us that they need a fast, accurate diagnostic aid that works on young kids, fits into the existing workflow, and costs less than $1,000. We're able to answer all these needs with a really simple solution, the laser otoscope. This laser is integrated into a standard otoscope with an additional setting. You just push a button to turn it on. This way the doctor's workflow is minimally affected, but there aren't any additional tools to use, and they can do this diagnostic in their standard practice. And so we integrate the laser with a standard white light otoscope because it allows the user to clearly visualize the difference between fluid and air behind the eardrum. As we all know, light doesn't scatter much in air, but when you have effusion fluid behind the tympanic membrane, light scatters much more. This difference is only obvious with a concentrated light source such as our laser. And a pilot clinical study using our technology showed that the laser otoscope increased pediatricians' OME diagnosis accuracy from 53%, which is basically a coin toss, to more like 89%. This is a really exciting result for a few reasons. By correcting the massive underdiagnosis of chronic OME, we will improve childhood quality of life, reduce developmental and behavioral health interventions, and for our hospital partners, we're giving them a tool that drives higher valued procedural referrals. Specifically, we estimate that the laser otoscope will enable an additional 120,000 kids in the United States to be treated with ear tube placement annually, while reducing the huge economic drain of misdiagnosis. Poor diagnosis of OME has been a problem for a long time. The diagnostic tools that are currently available to pediatricians are either too inaccurate, can't be reliably used on young children, add additional complication to existing workflows, or have other problems. We have $500 million market worldwide on otoscopes alone, with additional upside potential for follow-on products, disposables, and services. Our beachhead market is pediatricians, but we anticipate broad adoption by specialists in primary care. We have a simple, low-risk regulatory path identified as a Class 1, no 510(k) required medical device. And our technology is protected under 2 issued U.S. patents, and a preliminary freedom to operate search showed no barriers to producing our device. The $100,000 that we've raised already covers our final design work, and we're looking for additional funding to help us complete QMS, regulatory filings, safety testing, and a larger device effectiveness study that will help drive adoption. We anticipate in the next year that we'll have completed a soft market entry and have generated significant market interest to enable partnership or potential acquisition by a strategic partner, who then can then help us to broadly market and distribute the product. We've engaged a couple of potential partners and will continue to develop these relationships as we get closer to market. And lastly, here's our team that can make this happen. So Steve, who's here with me today, has a decade of experience in new product development, commercialization, and lifecycle management. Brecken and I have doctorates specializing in biomedical optics, and I have a decade of experience doing manufacturing, engineering, and quality work. As Elliot, who's also part of our team, has multiple prior med tech device exits. And we have a team of advisors and supporters that's been helping to make this happen. And please join us in helping to make sure that millions of kids get the treatment they need. We're all ears if you have any questions. Thank you.
Question about the patents.
Yeah.
So I noticed the wording is a little bit vague. So it's like it says like a condensed source of light. Does it mean that like you could also end up using an LED light, or is it only a laser that will cause this effect?
The patents are sufficiently protective to cover other sources of concentrated light, such as an LED.
I see. Okay.
Which I think is a good thing generally, because you potentially could do it with LEDs.
That
but
was my question. What other types of light show the same results?
It works better with lasers, but you could do it with LEDs.
This is a totally different product than current otoscopes, right? So are you planning on manufacturing it yourself or partnering with manufacturers who already sell it?
It's actually relatively similar to a current white light otoscope prototype here, but I mean, literally, you just hit a button to turn on a laser while doing an exam that otherwise fits perfectly into the workflow that doctors are already used to. But it is a totally new product, and to your point, I think we're most likely going to use a contract manufacturer for a variety of reasons, but just to make our lives easier mostly.
Who owns the patent?
Cleveland Clinic.
Have you already done the licensing?
I think I need to be cagey in what I say here.
Either have you had.
We are not fully through that process, but we'll be soon.
When you think about the market opportunity, you talk about the number of cases, but it's not exactly clear to me what the revenue potential is, and frankly, profitability potential is of this over the long term. Do you have estimates of how much revenue you would generate over time, or how much revenue this technology would generate?
So from a margins perspective, we're looking at a cost of goods in the $100 to $125 range, and an average selling price to distributors in the, say, $400 range. So we have a solid margin there, and really we, in terms of getting it out to the market, it all depends on market penetration. But we're looking at about $65 million for our initial market, which is pediatricians and family doctors. Once we get into both of those areas, then we can use that as leverage to get into larger hospital systems to standardize across the board.
What's the cost of a current otoscope today? So just one without this functionality, and what's going to cause the physicians to upgrade if they just bought one 6 months ago?
Yeah, so list price is around $650 or so, which then we're targeting to have our list price just about the same, which gets us down to an average selling price in that $400 range once we account for distribution costs. So we'll target it slightly higher just for price positioning reasons, but it'll be effectively the same. And then from conversations we've had with pediatricians, they generally have the ability to buy some products themselves without further approvals on P cards. So they can buy this just using their purchasing budgets without further approval, which is where we're going to get our initial sales, and then from there we get into the broader markets.
You mentioned NIH and others have been making calls for improvements. Do you have funding from SBIR or anything like that from NIH or NSF?
We have been pursuing that. I think they have clearly agreed that the need is there, but the NIH's SBIR program is a little bit funny in the things that they are willing and interested to fund. So I think that the larger study that we'd like to do to show effectiveness as a marketing tool for the product, I think is something that will very likely be able to get funded through an NIH SBIR. But the product development work that we've been doing now prior to that is something that's not within their scope generally.
Okay, thank you.